Hi, everyone. Today I'm here with Samantha Baker and Jake Griffith of Neel Robinson Stafford. And today we're going to talk about homeowners associations. What is a homeowners association?
So a homeowners association, or HOA for short, that's going to be a community that is known as a planned unit development or is a set of condominiums or just properties belonging to a homeowners association. And I know that's kind of a definition in and of itself, but the difference there is that these communities are governed by an association of homeowners, and it provides security, guaranteed upkeep of common areas and the community as a whole. And the Georgia Properties Owners Association Act also provides certain powers and responsibilities and duties to the HOA and to the association, and establishes certain rights that the HOA has. Some of those rights include the ability to levy liens against properties and other homeowners in the community of the association. And with those lien rights comes the ability for the HOA to actually commence a foreclosure process, very similar and almost exactly the same as that would typically happen if you default on your mortgage or have a foreclosure happen due to tax purposes. So it's pretty similar to just real property, real estate foreclosures in general.
How long is a homeowners association's covenants and restrictions valid or enforceable?
So for a very long time, it was typically just 20 years that those were enforceable. However, in the 1990s, there were several amendments that went through the Georgia legislature that amended kind of that timeline. So now, rather than it expiring after 20 years, there's automatic 20-year renewal periods that just keep cycling through, unless 51% of the owners in the community subjected to those covenants and restrictions vote to remove those restrictions from the property.
Okay.
So this automatic renewal became effective in 1993, and that's the current law in Georgia.
And it renews for a 20-year period. So correct. If 51% said we don't want to renew for the next 20 years, they would do it at the end of the 20-year period, saying we don't want it to renew for the next 20 years.
Correct.
Okay. When purchasing or selling a home or real estate in a community association, what are some of the things that you should consider?
Yes, so you need to find out first if the HOA is mandatory or if it's voluntary. A lot of older subdivisions, it's grandfathered in when they amend the covenants stating that new homeowners will be mandatory. They want to make it mandatory, but the whole old homeowners that have been there established are grandfathered in, and it's voluntary. So first and foremost, you need to find out if the homeowner association is mandatory. And if so, you need to find out, you have to be sure, know how much the dues are and when they're billed, when they are due, if they're annual, quarterly, semi-annual, or monthly. And you also need to find out if there are any special assessments. You should be aware if you're a homeowner, if there are, but that's always a question that a purchaser would need to know is, are there any special assessments? How much are they? What are they for? And when are they due? You also need to be aware, especially with condos and townhomes, what the HOA dues include. Do they include landscaping? Do they include water? Do they include sanitation? Do they include the community amenities? Do they include security? You also need to be aware. Yes,
are a big
yes, roofs, absolutely. Pine straw. There are a lot of things, especially for townhomes. And you also need to know what the master association policy covers for townhomes and for condos, most importantly.
What's typically required prior to closings when it comes to homeowners associations?
So what we're going to need to see or have provided between the parties and disclose would be, we need to obtain a closing letter from the management company, this management company, or if it's a self-managed by the homeowners for the HOA, then we'd need to get that from them. Also a statement of account, the condo or HOA certifications, questionnaires pertaining to the property type, the declarations and covenants, the master insurance policy, and even sometimes the W-9s for the entity. So that all needs to be disclosed to the parties, and some of that information needs to be provided to the closing attorney, in this case, Neel Robinson and Stafford. So unless the HOA is self-managed by the homeowners, many associations, as I mentioned, have this third-party management company that helps facilitate this document gathering that needs to take place for these closings. And then many of those property management companies also have their third-party companies that they work with to help facilitate all the gathering of information that we would need for a closing.
So couple things that I'm wondering about. So when you say they need a closing letter, who is there a specific fee for that, or does each HOA charge their own charge for that?
It depends if you're self-managed or if it's managed by a property management company. Obviously, if it's self-managed, that is established by the homeowners association. How much they're going to charge is to their discretion. As far as property management companies, when you have a property management company, and then if they have a third party that's that is distributing documents and information for them, then that is to their discretion as far as how much. There's not a set rate
So the fees
across
are
the board.
different.
Unfortunately, I wish there
Yeah.
was.
Fees are different for every neighborhood, so to speak.
Right.
Okay, and then on that, so a lot of times we'll hear that sellers will say, well, I've already paid my dues for the year. How is that handled at closing?
So if they've already paid their dues for the year, that's when prorations will come into play, and we'll prorate based on the period of time that they've actually owned the property. So that's how we would kind of make it fair for those new owners buying the property and for the former owners who are selling the property.
Awesome. All right. Anything else?
So I did want to add, speaking of the third-party companies, one big stickler that we are seeing across the board with the third-party companies that are collecting and distributing documentation for the property management companies is that they are requiring prepayment of the closing letter, which a lot of sellers don't understand why they have to prepay for that. As Jake mentioned at the very beginning, this is a lienable HOA. It is a lienable item, so that's why we have to obtain a closing letter, and it's required in order to close. So if they require prepayment, we have to collect it. And a lot of times with the third parties, they also want us to collect a transfer fee. That's their fee to transfer from one homeowner to the other, which is typically per the CAD, the Community Association disclosure that the agent will have you fill out for sellers whenever you're selling your property. They will, the transfer fee is typically a buyer's responsibility. So in that case, the seller would go ahead and pay for it, and then it would be reimbursed to the seller from the buyer at closing. Another thing is why it's very important to know if your property is self-managed or if it's handled by a property management company is because of us having to obtain the closing letter. Typically, if with a property management company, it's typically a 7 business day turnaround time for us to, from the time that we get the information, we order it, and for them to get us the actual statement of account or closing letter. If there's a delay on that, there are some companies that require 10 business days, which can really push it out. And then we would have to order it on a rush, which they tack on another hefty fee in order for us to get the letter within 3 to 5 days. So I think most importantly, going back to the community association disclosure, need to make sure you are disclosing the correct amount of what the dues are. So go ahead and do your research, find out the accurate amount so that you can disclose as a seller to your potential purchaser the correct amount of dues and special assessments. So it's extremely important that sellers provide correct information on the community association disclosure so there are not any potential issues that could cost them extra money that they were not expecting.
All right, good advice. All right, thank you guys so much for your time and all this valuable information regarding HOAs. And we appreciate you as always. Samantha Baker, Jake Griffith, Neel Robinson, Stafford. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
See you, Laura.
Bye.
Thank you for watching The Lowdown with the local market experts. You can find us online at lauramilleredwards.com, on Instagram at LME Realty, and on Facebook at LME Realty Group.